For me, I can't think of the MeToo movement and not have to face the fact that I have to look at Trump and he said the grab the pussy thing. Like, I cannot get over that. I cannot get over
Trump said that in privacy.
That's
okay?
that doesn't make it
right. No.
Can we get some Deja real quick?
Yeah.
So, by a show of hands, who here identifies as a feminist? Okay, cool. Simon?
I don't consider myself a feminist. Just the modern day feminist movement, I don't agree with it.
It depends, like, what you define a feminist. If we're talking about, like, equal rights, then of course, I don't think there's a single person who would not want equal rights between the sexes. But if we're talking about feminism today, where it's become so radicalized, then I don't want to be associated with that movement.
So I am a pro-life feminist, which I guess is something that has to be said these days since it's become so synonymous with abortion rights. But I'm a feminist because I believe in equality for women and that through our rights and liberations, we have a job to stand up for the weaker and more vulnerable and more marginalized, which also includes unborn women and men.
Yeah, I actually struggle with identifying as a feminist for a lot of different reasons. And when I think about my intersecting identities as it pertains to being Black, as it pertains to being also trans, as it pertains to this movement, I struggle with saying, oh, I'm a feminist, but also support women's rights at the same time.
I wouldn't identify as a modern feminist because I don't really feel any affinity for third wave feminism any way, shape, or form, but I support social and legal equality for men and women. And so I think that I think the term feminism has been co-opted by the left in some pernicious ways.
Do you feel that women still need to fight for equality?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Just look at the GOP. I mean, where's the representation? I think that's the thing, coming from Texas, being surrounded by a lot of conservatives and knowing representation is important, knowing that people don't know what they don't know, and if there's not a female voice there or a woman of color or a trans person to bring these issues up to the table, it's not gonna get dealt with.
Ariel just raised her hand, so I just wanna get her take on this as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say that even though there was like this there was this awakening on the Democrat side in terms of having more women, I wouldn't say that a lot of the women that came into the Democratic Party or were representing the Democrats were not women that I felt like I could really connect with.
By a show of hands, who here voted for Trump?
I don't publicize my votes, actually.
I just really did not like Hillary Clinton. You know, I actually also did a lot of community work for Bernie Sanders as well. And I don't know, I literally sat in the voting booth for like, it was a long time. I honestly didn't even think he was gonna win. So part of it was a kind of a joke. But again, I don't know, but will I vote for?
I want to speak to the privilege that holds for that election to be a joke for you, right?
Well, like, it wasn't really a joke. I was like,
you just said it.
Well, let me recant what I meant by a joke. You know, I didn't like either party. You know, I think it was like if Bernie Sanders was on the ticket, I would have voted for Bernie Sanders because I really did at the time really love what he stood for, because, you know, he really did a lot of grassroots, and I related to him as a Jewish American, and I thought that socialism was the answer. And then, you know, but then what happened with Hillary Clinton when she stole the election from him, you know, I just couldn't vote for her just because she was a woman. So I did vote for Trump.
Why not write in?
Because that's wasting a vote.
But it was a joke.
But it was a joke vote, so.
Right.
Okay, well, me, I support Trump simply because he's a businessman, and I come from a business family. I was raised, my dad was a single dad. He owned his own business. So, you know, who wouldn't want to vote for Trump? He's a businessman. No, he's a businessman. He's a whole billionaire.
It was handed to him
He's
by his
an
father.
entire billionaire. Just because his dad gave him $1 million afterwards, what does that mean? You have to keep up with that.
Do you consider yourself a Republican?
No, I'm a conservative.
But you like Trump, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm gonna recant my statement. I think that voting is important, and when I said it was a joke, I think that was kind of an inappropriate thing to say.
By a show of hands, do you support the MeToo movement?
I used to.
Okay, and why did you used to
Because I feel
and no
like
longer?
the MeToo movement have been hijacked by liberals. I understand, I'm a victim of molestation and stuff, so I understand that. I understand what you're going through. But to sit there and say, oh, believe all women, and just to demonize a man, I don't agree with that.
So let me add on to that. You know, I think that the MeToo movement did a lot of good. But with that being said, I think the whole idea of believe all women unequivocally is also a problem because, you know, there are instances where women do lie, and, you know, we need to be very careful how we go about this.
So I want to speak to that a little bit because I very much do believe in due process, but I don't think that believe women, or when they say believe survivors, I don't think they mean believe them in the face of all evidence that points to the opposite. I think it's more like if someone comes and tells you, hey, my car got stolen, you don't tell them, prove to me that your car got stolen. There's no way I won't believe it until you can prove it. I think it's more you believe that their car was stolen and then you investigate it as if it were stolen.
For me, I can't think of the Me Too movement and not have to face the fact that, like, okay, like these people are suffering major repercussions in their career, like Louis C.K., Harvey Weinstein, and I'm so glad, that's wonderful. But that I have to look at Trump and he said the grab the pussy thing. Like, I cannot get over that. I cannot get over
Trump said that in privacy.
That's like you and me.
No, this is free speech. You can say whatever you want to say.
He can say what he
You can
wants.
say whatever you want to say. That was private, and he recorded him. He violated Trump. Trump can say whatever he want to say. Women talk nasty about men and their own privacy, and so can Trump.
That about
My grandmother used to say that integrity is what happens in private, and if that I don't want a politician in the White, like, you know, unfortunately that's the case, that does like messed up fuck shit in private because it's in private.
Obama smoked weed.
That's okay with me. That's not the same as
If Obama,
that's a criminalized behavior and sexual violence.
You gotta hold everybody on the same line. If Obama can do that,
so that's a
so can Trump. Trump can say whatever he wanna say.
Can we hear from Deja real quick?
So, I mean, I think the difference,
I'm just
right,
saying
is like...
because weed is illegal in some places.
Yeah,
I'm just
absolutely,
saying.
because it's a criminalized behavior
If
with
he
no
can do that and say that and do that, then so can he.
It's a criminalized behavior with no victim.
I think the language is reprehensible. I think the language is reprehensible. I agree. So I can agree with that. I also think that, like, when we talk about, like, behavior of people, I think what happened with President Clinton and his intern is also a violation.
Right.
That was a power position.
Right.
That was a position that he abused. So I think there are a lot of men out there that make bad choices. So if we want to talk about the Me Too movement, I think we have to be really nuanced, but I also think we should talk about, you know, what are the dynamics of dating and how do we navigate? I mean, this is kind of scary for men and women. How do we navigate how to date in the workplace?
Well, do you think that dating, that's actually a question that I wanted to bring up. Do you feel that Me Too has affected dating?
So I am friends with a lot of men, and they think that they're scared of dating. A lot of men are terrified of taking a girl home who's had any amount of alcohol because he doesn't want to get accused of sexual assault.
I think it's better to be worried about that than to do it and not worry about it.
I think also, you know, join the club. Like, girls and women and femmes have been terrified to go on dates and go home and drink forever. So join the club.
So my next question is, how is abortion, pro-life, and pro-choice wrapped up into feminism? So
I'm
that's
not
one
gonna
pack
touch
there.
that.
I think for a lot of people, feminism, this wave of feminism has become synonymous with abortion. And so it's something where if you don't subscribe to abortion, then you don't belong in the feminist movement. You know, if you're pro-choice, cool. Like, legally you can have an abortion in this country, but let's talk about what these other choices are as well. And how can we support women who are facing unplanned pregnancies like I had when I was 16 years old, you know? What was the support and honestly the privilege I had to be able to choose life for my son, because so many women don't have that.
And I think personally, I very much agree. And when you see feminism that has this one axis that only talks about abortion, like having gone to school in Louisiana, I knew kids who knew what abortion was before they knew what a pap smear was. And you should be able to talk about all of sexual health, not just, you know, the most sensational elements of sexual health.
All right, for my next question, by a show of hands, are trans women helping push forward women's movement and gender equality?
I want to hear this.
Wait, what?
Okay, so why?
So we wouldn't have the LGBTQ rights movement if it wasn't for Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson.
Come on, you better know your history.
Right? Okay, I'm a historian, let's go. No, but for real, like if we didn't have Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson pushing the envelope and saying no, we're saying no to police brutality, we're saying no to respectability, we're saying no to this idea that we have to fit into your straight box and then just check the gay box or check the trans box and still be okay. You know, we wouldn't have the advancements in the women's liberation movement if we hadn't had this conversation about LGBTQ rights movement happening simultaneously, as well as, you know, Black power having at the same time. But at the same time, those get whitewashed and straightwashed and cis-washed away.
Even like as a trans woman on this panel, I often experience that women feel that trans women are not supporting. It's like, well, trans women often get pushed to the corner, like we don't want you in our spaces, but yet we stand and fight. Even with like, as trans women of color, we started and supported the Black Lives Matter movement, and then oftentimes we still see Black trans women being murdered, and there's no conversation around it.
For the people that disagreed, would you like to make a
I
statement?
sort of disagree. And some people didn't raise their hand.
You know, I think it's interesting though, right? Because when you have to, you didn't raise your hand, which was passive, but when you have to actively deny someone like their humanity, their agency to their face, it's really something different.
I'm not denying anything. I don't have that much knowledge on it, so I'm listening and I'm learning.
Exactly.
That's beautiful.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. This is amazing. You ladies are so amazing. You're smart. You're beautiful, beautiful souls, and I'm so honored to be in your presence right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, who wants to get drinks?
I can't. I gotta work again after this.
It was weird how like civil everyone was. That's like so different. Like, I'm like freaked out about it. I'm like,
Stay civil.
what?
This was dope.